Okay, good evening, everybody. Sorry for starting a little bit late. We're trying to wait for our people to join. Thank you for joining this webinar. And of course, I believe it's going to be very impactful, and we are going to enjoy the program. So once again, we apologize for rescheduling. We're supposed to start at 8:30. Of course, we needed to do that now so that we can finish on time. We have the moderator also in our midst. I think there are some technical glitches, but we're going to start right away. And I believe you can hear me. So please, if you have any question, you can put it up on the chat button. But you can confirm if you can hear me loud and clear before we start. You can just do that on the chat room. So please, someone can confirm before we start. Okay. Yeah, thank you for the confirmation. So I need to acknowledge my moderator, Mr. Elijah Jimoko, and I'm sure I also have some other prominent members of SCA, Stress Academy, Taiwo, Mr. Kazim, Mr. Israel, Mr. Salu, a quite number of them. I'm sure they are also online, trying to put forward their support for this webinar. And of course, this is quite interesting. SCA just thought of putting this together. because of the new ICANN syllabus. Around that will be effective November 2025. And of course, we used to have corporate reporting, or let me say we have financial accounting, then we have financial reporting, then corporate reporting. And now corporate reporting is being replaced by what's it called now? Strategic business reporting. So the issue now here is what is really in the mind of the examiner. Is this the same thing as corporate reporting? What do we really need to know regarding this? So that's why we wanted to try to see how we can assist you guys, especially if you are sitting for this paper, even if you are qualified, because of the fast changing environment. So these are the things we need to be conversant with, and also update our knowledge regarding this. As some of you may know, this is not really new because we have strategic business reporting SBR in ACC. I think as far back as maybe 2019, 2020 thereabouts. So I just decided to also follow suit. Of course, we used to have advanced financial accounting, then it changed to corporate reporting from its at SCA level. Then I can also follow suit. Then when it's I went to SBR, I can maintain the corporate reporting. They now have to come to SBR. Well, by the way, we've been seeing SBR questions in corporate reporting actually. And at SCA, when we lecture, we try to blend the two together, even when it was still at corporate reporting. So if you check like up to 4 guides ago, you see some elements of strategic business reporting in those exams. So my job here this evening is to try to so the focus is not really on corporate reporting. I'm not talking about the difference between corporate reporting and SBR. So that would be a little bit being backward, because as I mentioned, he's already testing SBR even in corporate reporting. So there's no point trying to compare corporate reporting with SBR. So the point is, how do we step up from financial reporting to strategic business reporting? So that's the whole idea. So this is not financial reporting, it is actually SBR. So we're going to have clear understanding on the differences between your financial reporting and your SBR. So what is really going on in the mind of the examiner, and how do you really prepare for SBR? So if you are at skills level probably now, then this is something that is prepared for. So anytime I take financial reporting, I also try to prepare my candidate, even for advanced financial reporting, which is now called the strategic business reporting. So when you look at, let me digress a bit to ACCA structure, you see strategic business reporting, you see strategic business leader, which is called case study in our home case. It's also called case study before in ACCA. Then when you check ICANN, you have strategic business reporting now. Then they maintain strategic financial management. So why are we having the word strategic? So this is something we really need to think about. Okay, so ideally, you expect that the question is going to change. Your response will also change significantly. But more importantly, how do you really prepare for this? Okay, so that's what we are going to be checking in the next couple of minutes. I hope my moderator will still be able to come online to moderate. So again, this is First Choice Academy. We specialize in ICANN tuition for foundation, skills and professional level. Okay, so again, we are blessed with students, tutors, and conducive learning environment. So the content is going to be, I'm going to look at 3 major content, even though I think as at last evening, I extended it to 4 content. Yeah, in my thinking. So we're going to look at the FR syllabus. and the step to SBR, then what are the new technical knowledge you need to acquire, and of course, the outlook of the SBR exam. So the fourth content will be a sample question. I just did a sample question, so for you to see how SBR questions and answers might likely look like. So this will really help you to know what to do. So let me start from key insights. I do hope you can see my screen. Okay, so let's get started. Now, so before you start studying for SBR, it is important for you to understand how your previous financial reporting studies relate to the exam, right? Number one, what are the knowledge that is assumed, and how does SBR differ from your strategic business reporting? So, as I mentioned earlier. But again, I understand that some of us, you might have sat for FR, maybe just recently or some time ago, okay? Or probably we're just coming out of school, university or polytechnic or any other establishment, or probably you're even exempted from financial reporting maybe because your school is under MCAT arrangements and all of that, right? So it doesn't really matter, right? So fundamentally, all of us, we have the same assumed knowledge, because there's no way we might have come across, financial reporting or financial accounting, as the case may be, at one point or the other. All right. So if you look at the diagram on your right hand side, let me see. I'm not sure my screen. Okay. So you see the flow from financial accounting, as I mentioned earlier, up to financial reporting, and of course now strategic business reporting. So the key issue here that I want to really bring up here to say, what are the assumed knowledge, right? So it is important for us to be able to isolate that. And how does FR, differs from SBR, and of course the flow of, what gets us to strategic business reporting, obviously for financial accounting. Even if you are not on financial reporting, you must have done financial accounting, probably at undergraduate level, as the case may be. All right. So let me move on because of time. So let's look at the FR syllabus and the step to SBR. They are not the same actually, even though what confuses people is to say we are still dealing with the same accounting standards, although at SBR we have broader accounting standards. So if you look at FR syllabus, for example, you still have your impairment, you have your asset held for sale, extend, and all of that. So when you come to SBR, you still have all of that there with some additional standards like pensions accounting, share-based payments, leases, and all of that. So how will an examiner, for example, test impairment under financial reporting, and how is he going to test that same impairment, that's how it says, for example, under strategic business reporting? So the same thing goes to your group accounting, your income taxes, your consolidated cash flows, and all of that. Okay, so that's why we need to really explain this. I will try as much as possible not to lecture. So this is not, I'm not lecturing SBA actually. I just wanted to give you some insights that will help you to actually prepare for, November exams. So I'm going to start with conceptual and regulatory framework for financial reporting. If, for example, or probably if you started lectures for November exams, and as I will always say, if you have a good lecturer, you should have started from the regulatory framework for financial reporting in Nigeria, where you go through CAMA in Nigeria, for example, the sources of Nigerian GAAP, you go through the evolution of SAS in Nigeria by the NASB, which is now being done by the FRCN. So it should have gone through all of that up to the IASB conceptual framework. And of course, you should be familiar with the 8 chapters of the 2018 IASB conceptual framework from chapter 1 to chapter 8, you should be familiar with all of this. So now, so when you look at that, how how is that tested in financial reporting, and how is that tested in SBR? So that's what I wanted to check here. In SBR, you will not be asked, to just restate the content of the conceptual framework. So don't expect the examiner to ask you, for example, who are the users of financial statements? You can do that in FA, financial accounting. You can do that in financial reporting. You can't do that here. Users of financial statements, because when you look at the chapter 1 of the IASB conceptual framework, it talks about the objective of general purpose financial statement. And for you to understand that, you need to know the users of accounts, which are the internal users and external users, and their information need. So a direct question will be that identify the users of accounts and their information need. That is financial reporting. But here, the examiner will now want to deep dive into your understanding. How does the financial statement prepared by an entity affect the judgment of the user? That's what it's going to ask you. So now in corporate reporting, let me say this, we look at financial reporting from the preparer's angle, but here in SBR, we'll now start looking at it from the preparer's angle and the investor's perspective. Does that make sense, right? Okay, so I'll try to, play that a bit so you can understand. Okay, so what that implies is the judgment that a user is going to apply to a financial statement is impacted by a number of things that we are going to explain as we move on. All right. So, but the ideal thing here is if the examiner intends to bring on questions around conceptual and the regulatory framework of financial reporting, obviously, we not just ask you to just list them. If I look at chapter 3 of the IASB conceptual framework that talks about the financial statement and the reporting entity, so that's where you have the two underlying principles, going concern and prudency concept. So again, if it's going to test going concern, in FR, I think you see that in some past questions, you can say explain the term going concern. But here, it will not do that. It might likely create a scenario for you and ask you to assess the going concern of that company. So in that case, you now want to look at what are the financial concern, the operational concern in that company, and the legal or regulatory concerns. So it's not just about restating the obvious. And in fact, in most cases, I'll get to IFRS shortly, it would have even stated the requirement of the IFRS. So in that, it's not just for you to be able to, apply to a scenario. So you are going to see more scenario questions at this level, and you're doing more reporting. Okay. So here, instead of him asking you to restate the content of the conceptual framework, it will require you to display a deeper understanding of those concepts, and you're able to discuss. Now, in that discussion, you should be able to critique it. So you have to think about that, right? So because the examiner wanted you to say, when you look at standards, for example, everybody just wants to know standards and just want to cram it. But in your head, can you critique it? Can you challenge the status quo? What are the loopholes in this accounting standard? So you should be able to do that. So that's exactly what he wanted to do, under the conceptual framework and, of course, regulatory framework. And in addition to that, you may also be required to apply basic principles or accounting concept to transactions and events that an existing standard does not cover. So I'm sure you are aware that not all transactions are covered by existing standards. So in that case, we go back to the IASB conceptual framework. Does that make sense? Right? And how does that make sense to you? So if you look at IS 8, for example, accounting policy, changes in accounting estimates and errors. IS 8 talks about selection of accounting policies or basis for selecting an accounting policies. And he divided it into two. He said, number one, areas covered by an IFRS, right? Then number two, areas not covered by an IFRS. So in the first case, it says if an area is already covered by an IFRS, then that IFRS should be applied to those events and transactions. But when it came to the second one, it says if an area is not covered by an IFRS, then the entity should use its own judgment to develop and apply an accounting policy. Did you see that? So you have to expect that in some questions, there might not be an existing IFRS that covers them. So in that case, the understanding of the conceptual framework has to apply. Now, IFRS 8 now says when that company or the entity is developing and applying its own accounting policy, it must result in information that are reliable in those financial statements. So when you go back to chapter 2 of the IASB conceptual framework, where it talked about qualitative characteristics of financial information, we now divided it into two: fundamental qualitative characteristics and enhancing. Under fundamental, you now have relevant and faithful representation. Can you see? We talks about all of that, talks about reliability. All right, you can see the connection. Okay, but for financial reporting, most likely straightforward questions, direct question, maybe in some cases some deep dive, but not as heavy as strategic business reporting. So those type of questions will require good working knowledge of the conceptual framework, right? And the required application skills are just the best developed through questions. So the best thing for you to do is to practice questions. You can read conceptual framework and in your head, oh, I understood this. This is really brilliant. This is fine. But by the time you see some question, then you begin to wonder what's really going on. So the best way to overcome this is to solve past questions, right? So let's go to accounting for transactions in the financial statement. Even though I've tried to also jump into this as I was explaining. Now, you're already familiar with a number of accounting standards like PPE, like revenue standards, leases, taxes, and all of that. At SBR, you now need to add to this knowledge, okay? And you're expected to know further detail in those standards, right? Now, my information here will be that you'll be introduced to new standards at SBR. I think I mentioned that earlier. Like, for example, IS 19, employee benefits, share-based payments, IFRS 2, you have IFRS 8, operating segment, you know, we have that segment reporting actually, and some other ones. So that will be added to, you know, what we've done in financial reporting. So SBR is not only about the technical content of those standards. So that means we also need to step up from mere cramming or knowing the requirements of the standard. So, but the question is, how do we apply to scenarios, right? So, for example, possible or possibly complex scenarios. So, how do we really apply the content of those, you know, the technical content of the existing standards, right? Now, so one thing you need to understand is sometimes, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's not just about knowing the requirement of the standard. Oh, I know IS 10, I know IS 5, I know this, I know that, right? So the reality is that, can you critique them? Why do they even exist? So that's the understanding. So that's why sometimes when I take standards in class, I will just, you know, try to make my students understand that why do you think these standards really exist, right? What's the rationale behind those standards? Okay, the accounting treatment. What's really going on in the mind of the standard setter? Why? Why is it that IFRS is principles-based accounting system and we still have the US GAAP that is rules-based accounting system? Why? So you must know the reason behind that. You know, at F1 level, nobody bothers you about that. But the moment you get in here, because now you're a professional, you should start thinking about, all of this. Now, let me quickly say something. You will score very little in this exam for simply restating the requirement of the standards. So it's not just about you cramming the standards and restating them. So you should start building the skills necessary to analyze scenarios. You are going to see a lot of scenarios, okay? You will see a lot of scenarios, even though you still have some numbers, but most likely those numbers will help you to support your point. Unlike before, that you're going to prepare financial statements, prepare this, prepare that, okay? Maybe they may still maintain that at number one. We're not sure yet until it's in November 2025, but I can assure you it might be bit by bit. In fact, in some cases, it will even prepare those accounts for you. You can prepare group accounts where goodwill is measured, a proportionate share of net asset acquired at the date of acquisition. However, it is a group policy to measure NCI at fair value. Then it's asking you to probably, is it correct, or you should try to, look at the correct accounting treatment, or what is even the impact of those two methods of measuring NCI, the impact on consolidation process. So these are the deep dive you should expect. So it's beyond mere you understanding the calculations, okay? Because in reality, systems can do all of that. It's just about posting. But what is the impact on the bottom line? What is the impact on the top line? So these are the things that you need to start thinking about. So your ability to now start to apply those accounting standards to scenarios, right? Consider the effect of the treatment, right, on stakeholders, as I mentioned earlier, and discuss what are the issues surrounding such rationale, all right? So this is also very important. So because of time, now let me go to analyzing and interpreting financial statement. In financial reporting, for example, you've done ratios, right? So when you do ratios at that level, what happens? The examiner can just say calculate gross profit margin, net profit margin, or you can bring it in form of classification or categories of ratios, profitability, liquidity. All right, then you do some little interpretation. So that's what it's doing at that level. At this level, it won't be like that. It will be as straightforward as possible. And I can give you a number of ways it's going to test ratios. All of these, we're going to tackle them in class, right? Now, for example, it can give you some ratios with some adjustments. For example, you can say forecasts. It can give you let's say two companies, they have the base of accounting are not the same. Company A applies cost model, company B applies evaluation model. Then the parent company or the acquirer wanted to acquire either of the company. They now says you should, analyze and advise which of the companies is a better position target. So the fact that they did not have the same basis of accounting, that means your comparison cannot be thorough, because automatically the company that applies revaluation model will be a better performer than the company that applies cost model. You should understand that if you have a good lecturer at your financial reporting level. Because ideally, if I revalue my asset, my profit to be high, my total asset to be high, I will have evaluation reserves. But if I apply cost model, I add depreciation. Even though when you revalue upward as well, you see our depreciation. But when you have cost model, your depreciation is there to reduce your bottom line. You have lower total assets and all of that. So when you apply ratios, what do you expect? The company with the evaluation model will obviously come out clean, right? So now the examiner now expects you to align those two companies together before you can now analyze. You can see. So these are the kind of questions. That's why I said I can actually be testing SBR actually. All right. And I think that kind of scenario brought it in, was it last year case study as well? Okay. So that's what he has been doing. And we have been doing all of this in the class actually. Okay, so these are the things it's going to be bringing. So how do you convert the account that is prepared under the valuation model back to cost model? And that is the beginning of you understanding financial state. So if you don't understand that, how do you analyze, how do you even interpret in the first place? So these are the things you won't think about in strategic business report. Obviously, you can't see all of these in financial reports. So at this level, you'll be presented with a scenario which will include numbers, narrative information, and accounting treatment, assumptions, estimates, and details of bias. Now, one area of strategic business reporting in syllabus is also worthy to note is the additional performance measure. For example, examiner might also asking you to prepare adjusted revenue, profit, key performance indicator. So what you can do here is to start reading journals, read journalist comments on financial statement issued by a company. Recently a lot of companies are issuing their half-year unaudited account. So you look at nairametrics and some of those analysis or analysts, right? So you see their comments, you can, start reading them. So all of these will help you, right, to really get through, right? So for preparation of financial statement, you have group accounting. So the focus is on calculating specific amount. So I think I mentioned this earlier. So here, we're not sure yet, okay, what the dimension is going to take. But if I want to go by what I saw when I wrote ACCA, actually, we will not prepare full-fledged consolidated accounts. So it's going to be in pieces, goodwill there, disposal there, and all of that. You might even say a company acquire, company A acquire company B, meanwhile company B only have one asset. So you start asking you, does that constitute acquisition? Hey, you're now wondering, what's the definition of a business under IFRS 3? So all those little things that we didn't pay attention to when we're taking when we're doing CR, we now need to start paying attention to that. So can I pin that again? Company A acquires company B, meanwhile company B has just one asset. Then the requirement says, does that constitute acquisition under IFRS 3? So the question is, what is the definition of a business, and what does acquisition really mean under IFRS 3? So these are the things they think about. So it's not affecting students alone; it's also affecting lecturers. So, so we need to step up, both the students and the lecturers. We need to step up to SBR. So the mode of teaching, the mode of learning is changing significantly. So this is very important. So please, what you need to do is to have, obviously, you must have good understanding of your consolidation process or technique, which you must have done again in your financial reporting. But if you did not write financial report, obviously you have your work to do. All right. So that's just the reality. Okay. So should we abandon the way we calculate now? No, we're not abandoning that, but you need to do deep dive. All right. And see the issues that the examiner may bring up in the preparation of financial statements. Okay. Now, what are new technical knowledge? I hope you are enjoying what I'm saying. I'm speaking too much. Okay. Maybe if you have started taking SBR lectures, maybe you can understand, but I hope you understand it. So let's look at some new technical knowledge. Now, current issues. The examiner likes this one a lot, and this can give you easy marks in the exam, right? So current issue is actually very wide, but again, financial reporting, is continuously evolving. ISB is also amending existing standards. So also issuing new standards. These are current issues. So if I ask you now, in the financial space, what are the current issues? You should be able to mention one or two or three or four of them, right? So that is, that is even eating the global space. For example, we have the issue around what's it called? Sustainability disclosures, IFRS 1, IFRS 2, So these are current issues. I think IFRS 18 is replacing IS 1, These are current issues. So you need to be very current in this regard. In Nigeria, for example, there is issues around the new tax reforms. Are you really familiar with all of this? Okay, you can get to, as you think it's tax service, so if you're expecting question on advanced tax in that area, you can get to SBR, and the examiner will be asking you, you just resume as the new CVO. Is that CVO? Not, are you aware? Is that CFO again? Abi? Go and check the content of the syllabus. Moving from chief financial officer to chief value officer. All right. So they have said you have just been appointed as CEO of a new company, and now the board has asked you to prepare the what's it called? The impact of the new tax regime on the financial reporting. Look at that on the bottom line, blah blah blah, and all of that. Then the requirement is now saying what will be your approach to that. So what are the factors you need to consider? You can't read it in any book. You cannot, I keep saying, I keep telling my students that everything you require to pass SBR, even from corporate reporting, you can't read all of them in any book, in any textbook. No, not all of them. Some of them will be produced by your understanding, by what you have fed yourself with, by reading financial statements, reading financial journals, understanding what is going on, you know, in the economy, in the global space, in the financial space. So and the understanding of standards, obviously. So the combination of that will help you to produce certain answers in the question in the exam, right? So please, you need to be aware of this. Even what's it called? The development of conceptual framework. So these are areas of current issues. So for IFI specific, you can visit IFI's Foundation website to get yourself up to date. Another one that you should know, the new technical knowledge, even though it has been there, but it is now more pronounced, is the issue of ethics. Okay, so again, don't expect the examiner to start asking you what are the ICANN code of ethics. I can never ask you that. You have to say integrity, objectivity, confidentiality, professional competence and due care, and professional behavior. So we don't ask you that. So you should be able to apply all of these to scenario. So, and I think one of the things you should start preparing for is going to be asking you what are the ethical issues in this scenario. You will create it, you will deal with scenario. And I can assure you that 3 hour 15 minutes cannot be enough because you have a lot of scenarios to deal with. And one interesting thing is, he will not even tell you which standard is tested. He just say response to the above scenario. So in those scenarios, you should start thinking about how do I bring out ethical issues in those scenarios and accounting issues. So if the examiner says what are the ethical issues and accounting issue in the above scenario, how do you respond? So you need to start thinking about that. So if you are before now, you are very good at calculation, you can easily pass some of these papers. But now, even advanced taxation, go and check this, is already demanding that candidates should be able to write good reports in advanced tax. Can you imagine that you want to think ordinarily, it should be full of calculation? So the same thing applies to SBR. So you are going to do a lot of discussing, talking, and all of that. Just support your answers with few numbers. Meanwhile, you also need to understand how those numbers are computed. So don't say, hey, they said this, you're going to be discussing. No, they don't want to learn the calculation. No, you must know, because sometimes he may do some calculations for you and ask you to check whether those calculations, whether it's a correct accounting treatment. Then if you don't even know how to do it in the first place, how do you check, right? So that makes SBI a little bit tougher than strategic business, than corporate policy, okay? So you need to understand this area. Ethics, yet again, is this area of syllabus that you can just, start looking at past questions to do this. So the applicable ethical codes will be those in the International Ethics Standard Boards for accountants, and of course the ICANN, right? So this ethical consideration can be at organizational level or for individual, particularly with those in business. Now, another area that you also need to think of is the non-financial reporting, right? So I mentioned it earlier, the issue of sustainability and integrated reporting. So any other information in the financial statement, aside, let me say in the annual report, aside the financial statement, is the non-financial reporting, right? So if you say financial reporting, you're talking about maybe 5 things: your income statement, your statement of financial position, your note to the account, your cash flow statement, and your statement of changes in everything. Any other information outside this might be non-financial. For example, chairman's reports, management commentary, sustainability report, integrated report, risk management, corporate governance report, all of these are non-financial, but more pronounced in the present day is the sustainability reporting. And of course, for SBR, you must learn IFRS S1 and IFRS S2 is really pronounced in your syllabus. So you need to really understand those requirements, even though it's still very much a gray area. I think for PIs in Nigeria, they're supposed to start voluntary adoption according to Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria in 2028, even though it's asking for some documents for readiness assessment, and you must know all those documents. Okay, so in the financial reporting is there actually. So for my SBR student, don't worry, I'm preparing something for you guys. Okay, so in the class, so you must know all of that. Okay, so what's the FRC demanding from PIs, to be submitted 3 months before the financial accounting year, 6 months before, and 3 months after, and all of that. So all of those, you must understand those requirements. Okay, so these are the non-financial reporting angle to that. All right, so you can also check the website of the International Integrated Reporting Council that contain many examples in this area. Right, so this is also very important. So let's look at the SBR exam. So this is what I have to say before I round up. I think time is fast spent already. Now, as you have gathered, the style of SBR exam is likely to be different from CR and FR. So I deliberately merge CR and FR together so that I can start thinking about how to approach this exam. Now, a common misconception is that a reporting exam is largely numerical, so this is changing. So you need to understand that. However, the emphasis in SBR is on written questions. Okay, so this is going to change, although some calculations are likely to be required, but this will be more like a support, to your written answers. So please take note of this. You should expect to see questions covering group accounting, specific financial reporting issues, ethical issues, scenario analysis, and of course, appraisal of financial and non-financial information, which may include stakeholders' perspective. I said earlier, in corporate reporting, we are looking at it from the preparer's perspective, but now it's going to extend to investor perspective, stakeholder, and all of that. So you may also see unusual concepts tested, which require to think laterally and apply discipline. It will, like as I mentioned, there is no answer anyway. You just have to think, and apply basic accounting principles. Okay. And again, what are the basic accounting principles? That would be the strong understanding of the IASB conceptual framework. So before we go, or before I conclude, let me now give you sample of SBR standard questions. So let's take a look at this, and you will see that this is actually SBR. So let's see. Now, Robbie had a portfolio of trade receivables with current amount of 4 million at 31st May 2023. At that date, the entity entered into a factoring agreement with a bank whereby it transferred the receivables in exchange for 3.6 million in cash. Robbie has agreed to reimburse the bank for any shortfall between the amount collected and 3.6 million. Once the receivables has been received, any amount above 3.6 million, less interest in the amount will be repaid to Robbie. Directors of Robbie believe that these trade receivables should be recognized. Look at this. So this is actually the type of question you will see. They are confused. They don't know what to do. Can you see? The directors of Robbie believe that these trade receivables should be recognized. Now, look at the requirements. Explain the appropriate accounting treatment. That is what you'll be saying. Sometimes you will say, explain the correct or discuss the correct accounting treatment. Sometimes you say, respond to the scenario above. Can you see? You say, but here it says, explain the appropriate accounting treatment of this transaction in the financial statement of the year ended the May 2023. Now, look at that. That's the first one. And evaluate the treatment in the context of the conceptual framework for financial reporting. What does that mean? So the first is, what is the appropriate accounting treatment? That's number one. Number two, that's your appropriate accounting treatment. Is it in alignment with the IASB conceptual framework? That's the question. And if you are not able to tackle this properly, you won't get the maximum mark. Okay, so tell me, what calculation are you doing here? There is no calculation. It's just about you telling. But remember, the issue was, should we recognize this trade receivable? So this is very interesting. So this says we ask another question. And this is the type of question you start, thinking about. Now, look at this. If I'm in this exam, the next thing that is going in my head is, what standard are they testing? Okay, because in the requirement, it did not say according to IS 10, according to IS 8, according to IS 36, according to this, according to that. You don't expect this at this level. Even in some financial reporting questions, if I'm lecturing financial reporting, I also love to use this kind of question so that I can train my students on how or not to always rely on the fact that the examiner will always quote the standard. So here, they did not quote the standard. So how do I know the standard? Can you see? So that's why you need to start lectures. You need to start on time. And incidentally, I say I started stream 1, June 28th, right? Then we're going to start stream 2 tomorrow. So please join so that you can start on time. So when I look at this, so this is technique. So the moment you look at this kind of scenario and you say, the major issue here is that he said they held a portfolio of trade receivables. If your study is not complete, you will never know the standard that has been tested. Receivable is a financial instrument. Can you see that? So it's testing IFRS 9 actually. So it's a financial instrument, but because it's a receivable in the books of Robbie, it makes it a financial asset. And I will prove it to you. What is a financial instrument? Ideally, again, as I always say, if you have a good lecturer, the lecturer will tell you, if he's going to test teaching financial instruments, that there are 3 standards that are applicable to financial instruments. One is IAS 32, all right? The other one is IFRS 9, and the other one is IFRS 7, right? So IAS 32 talks about classification of financial instruments. Then IFRS 9 talks about measurement, and IFRS 7 talks about disclosure, all right? Now, what is now financial instrument? Any contract, okay, that give rise to financial assets of one entity and financial liability or equity instrument of another entity. So this is the way I can describe that. So I have this contract. So this is a contract. This is a pen actually. It is a contract. So this contract, when I look at it, it gives rise to financial assets of one company. That same contract gives rise to financial liability or equity instrument of another entity. So one example is a receivable. Receivable is that I sold to you on credit so that you're going to pay me later. So because you're going to pay me later as a financial asset to me, because that same instrument is a payable to you. So you pay, me I will receive. So to me in my books, it's a receivable, it's under current asset. So to you, it will be under your current liability as a payable. So that's why it is a financial instrument. Did you see? So it's talking about financial instrument. And the simple question is asking is, based on that scenario, can they recognize receivables in line with IFRS 9? That's what you're saying. So you now need to learn the requirements under IFRS 9 on when and how receivables should be derecognized. So the moment you can understand that, you will now look at this scenario. Can they derecognize based on the requirement of IFRS 9? That is the meaning of explain the appropriate accounting treatment. Did you see that? So after you have done that, you will now tell him, is it consistent with the requirements of the IASB conceptual framework. And that's it. So that's what you expect in SBR question. I hope I'm not confusing. Am I convincing or confusing you? But it's actually very simple. Okay. So you won't even understand this question if you have not taken lectures or if you have not read. Okay. So let me do so. Okay. Oh, the answer is there actually. Oh, I got it. See, right now. Okay. So maybe when you have the material, you can look at. I'm not lecturing. I just wanted to show you a sample of SBR standard question. If it was corporate reporting or financial reporting, you can just say what are the conditions to be met before a receivable can be recognized. He will never say that at this level. Okay, I said he just wanted to give you bonus, but it was unlikely. So let me conclude. Overall, concluding part, the approach to reporting taken in SBR is best described as holistic. All right, it is designed to reflect real life as well as an exam and real life success is dependent on demonstration of specific skills of analysis, identifying issues, application of knowledge, and impacting with others, as well as general skills such as time management. So you really need to work with time management. My concluding part 2, candidates should note that underlying ethical thinking is required in the financial reporting process, sustainability reporting process, and skepticism about business error and fraud. Candidates will also be expected to apply professional skepticism, substance over form, critical thinking at this level. If you don't know all these terminologies, you're on your own. What is substance over form, professional skepticism, ethical thinking, critical thinking, which makes business reporting judgment. Another one I may want to mention is, I think I wrote it somewhere, maybe I skipped that, is also creative accounting and window dressing, earnings management. You must know all of this, right? So the most important part of the question, this is my concluding part 3, is the feedback you get on your answers, either from your tutor textbook or from careful review of your own answer. All right, so I'm trying to work on an article, read the mind of SBR Baka. Maybe that will also help. And also another article around strategic business reporting, exam technique for success. So all of these will help to build your confidence in the exam. Thank you for listening. I hope you are blessed. Thank you very much. I'm not sure whether the moderator can still come on. Let me see. Please, you can try to unmute. My moderator can come on. Okay. Okay. If you have questions, please, you can put it on chat button.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you, sir. My moderator, can you unmute?
Yes.
Yes,
thank you, Mr. Ayomi Ladokun. Thank you for your for the insight into the SBR. You have done great work for us tonight, and I want to believe that the student, our professional student, also they understood you, and I'm sure that we all appreciate your effort, your time that you are giving to us tonight. We are not taking all these things for granted. I know that you are interested in the success of students. That's why you are giving us time tonight. So thank you once again, and thank you. So our professional student, if you have any question, I'm just going through the chat button now. We don't have any question there. I want to believe that we all understood everything that has been discussed tonight. And I want to also, please just drop your question on the chat button. Drop your question. I'm going to read it out. So the recorded version is going to be on our YouTube as well, so that you can actually make a reference to it anytime, any day. So if you have any question, just drop it. So while we are waiting for students, I want to drop question on the chat button. We also need to let you know that the stream 2 of our lecture is commencing tomorrow. Yes, stream 1 commenced like 5 weeks ago. So we are kickstarting stream 2 tomorrow in our tuition center at K2. So if you are writing this diet, I think you don't want to miss our lecture tomorrow. So thank you. We have a question from somebody, from Tina Jacobs. So it said, for someone preparing for ACCA SBR exam, can we rely on your class for the exam?
The answer is capital yes. It's the same content.
All right. So you can hear that the answer is capital yes. ICANN has migrated to the same syllabus with ACCA, so you can definitely rely on the content, the lecture of FCA SBR to write ACCA. So thank you for that. So I don't think we have any other question again. Study center. Okay. We are going to. I will drop the study center address on our WhatsApp group. But however, on your way to K2 My 12, that's if you know NNPC, our study center is opposite NNPC Ikorodu Road. If you are going to Ikorodu Road, opposite NNPC, that's a YTK filling station. So we are using the shopping mall that the building inside that filling station. That's where we are using. So tomorrow the lecture is starting by 7 a.m. Thank you. So, Mr. Yolado, can you any parting shot from your side?
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining. If you're writing this exam, you don't need to entertain anything, right? All you need to do is to rejiggle your thinking process and, of course, to get a good tutor. And I say it's there for you as well to guide you through this exam, and not just SBR, other papers as well, SFN, ATAX, and of course, is study, right? So we'll see you tomorrow or next week. Anytime you want to join. Thank you for tonight. Let's have a great night rest. Good night. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.